Let's talk logically for a second. So when it came to the election of Donald Trump, I heard a lot of MAGA Republicans talking about how they were happy that Trump was going to drain the swamp and he was going to replace all these lifelong politicians with businessmen. And one of the things that drew people to Donald Trump was the fact that he was a businessman and not a politician. And now he's filling his administration with lots of businessmen and CEOs. And a lot of the people on the right think that this is a great thing, that having businessmen in political offices is better than lifelong politicians. But I would argue that I would rather have politicians than businessmen running our country. Because if you don't understand what the role of a CEO of a corporation's job is, then you are fundamentally wrong on what you think that they would do for the country. If you look at any business, the role of a CEO is one thing: profits. I want you to ask yourself, how in the hell does that apply to the government? Do you really want the government run on the foundation of just profits? Do you want the government to have some kind of coffer that they stuff all of our money into and then they hoard it? And another role of the CEO in corporations and in business is to cut costs, and they raise the price of their services and goods in order to maximize the profitability. How does this apply to government? What makes you think that this is a good approach to government? Because when you put the CEOs in charge of government, they're going to do exactly the same thing that they were doing in their roles as CEOs of a corporation. They're going to start cutting costs. Well, what does that look like? That means cutting services for those who need it the most. Their goal is to maximize profitability. We don't need a government that's profitable. We don't want a government that's just cutting all of the resources that a majority of the Americans need. So the CEOs will get in there and they'll see waste where really there is no waste when it comes to what a government is supposed to provide and do for its people. They'll start cutting food stamp benefits. They'll start cutting WIC benefits. They'll start cutting education benefits. They'll start cutting healthcare benefits, and they'll start cutting healthcare benefits for our veterans. They will cut costs because that's all they can see. They don't see the overarching benefit to the government's role in people's lives. The government should be there to help support and to help build up its population, not cut it down. So if you can explain to me why you think it's better that a businessman runs the government than politicians, I would really like to know, because at the end of the day, how does that benefit America? How does that benefit America if we're not spending the money on resources and things that benefit the American people? You have to remember, the government pays for our roads, pays for our bridges. They take care of so many things, and yet the businessman will come in and try to cut funding for all of these things. And then the side effect of that is, well, somebody's going to have to build the roads, somebody's going to have to build the bridges, somebody's going to have to maintain healthcare, and et cetera, and the list goes on down the line. So what are these businessmen going to do? Well, they're going to cut deals for themselves. They're going to say, oh, we need to privatize everything. And so they're going to cut deals that benefit the companies that they just left, or they're going to cut deals with companies where their friends are CEOs of those corporations. And all the while, the American citizen is going to be the one that's going to be undercut out of that deal and left holding the bag. We know from history that the privatization of all of these things that a majority of the American public relies on is a bad move. It never ends well. Once we started privatizing research and development into new pharmaceutical drugs, look to what happened in that industry. It's all about the profit. The price for medication keeps skyrocketing. Every single year it goes up. But there was a time when people would do medical research for the benefit of the citizens, and they would release those patents out into the marketplace. They didn't hoard these patents to themselves so they could extrapolate as much wealth as possible from their consumers. I don't know of any company out there that when they cut costs, they pass that on to the consumer. In fact, they raise prices. every quarter prices go up, or annually the prices go up in order to increase those profit margins. You remember McDonald's, right? When we used to have the dollar menu. Well, now that's become the value menu. You remember when Subway's big thing was the $5 foot long? Well, you can't get a $5 foot long anymore. But yet the profits have increased for these companies massively. So CEOs and corporations are bad inside of the White House for that very reason. They are not thinking the benefit of the American public. They are thinking of cutting costs and maximizing more money into their coffers. Well, I don't want the government to have this giant surplus of money. The government's role should be to take our tax money in and then improve and raise the standard of living for its citizens.